Hi guys and welcome, this is Scrimitzu and you're watching Professional Advice, video number 2. We'll be analyzing some hands today and seeing if our members did the right thing. So let's get on to it. Our first hand for the day is Broke Sultan's hand, who has posted for the first time in the forum. So welcome Broke Sultan and have some fun. Thank you for posting into my analysis thread and let's just get on with the hand. So you're sitting with in the small blind with 106 blinds. Alejandro raises from middle position. He gets called by Kuzida in the button and you squeeze from the small blind. So I really like the sizing here. It's 0.60. It's 4 times the original raise just because Alejandro ITF raised 15 and we have another call. So that's why we are raising 4 times and not 3 times. So I really like, I'm beginning to be a fan of you in this hand. So raising 4x, the original raise here is really nice. I really like it. On the flop, if they're unknown on the flop, I wouldn't c-bet. If I knew that they would be tight enough, I'd probably c-bet the flop just because we have the ace of hearts and that blocks most ace high flush draws, and the only hands that they could be calling with on the flop are ace queen and king queen. And as I know, if I knew that they'd be tighter, they wouldn't call pre-flop with ace queen or at least king queen. So I'd be c-betting this flop, but the check here against 2 unknowns is perfect. So I think what you were asking about is the turn and river. So let's just go to the turn and river. When the ace hits on the turn, it's perfect card. Bets on the flop, so I'm not putting anyone on ace queen because they would probably bet. I don't think they are smart enough to check back ace queen on that flop. So when you bet on the turn, it's for pure value from flush draws, from ace jack, ace 10. You're getting, yeah, sometimes they show up with ace queen here. Sometimes you get raised by deuces or eights or sometimes queens, but I think queens bets the flop. That should be the case. So the original raiser calls you. That gives you a little more information because Kuzida would be on a wider range when he only called pre-flop. And he also called your squeeze, so he's on a wider range. But Alejandro, he was opening pre-flop, so he has a tighter range. So I'm putting on Alejandro when he opens from the middle position. I'm putting him on ace jack plus, probably suited broadways, sometimes king jack, king queen for sure, and pairs basically. Maybe sometimes some suited connectors, so he has some flush draws in his range. So he calls here, so when he calls, I'm putting him on, I don't really think he'd flat ace eights or deuces or queens ever here. So that's out of his value range. He'd probably, okay, he may have ace queen, sometimes they do have ace queen here, but they're also calling with ace jack, they're also calling with a ton of flush draws, so betting the turn is compulsory and I like it here. I like the sizing 1.25. I'd make it even a little bit more, so you have less to shove in a bigger pot on the river, but that's your choice. I like the sizing here. I like the sizing. So on the river, there's a deuce of clubs. That's pretty much a brick that only brings private pairs the board. So I don't think ace jack is folding at this point because nothing has improved. But if he's called with ace jack on the turn, he'll probably call on the river when you ship it. That's why I wanted to emphasize on making the turn bet bigger because you get more money from flush draws, so you win in the long term. And after that, when you bet the river, so you're betting 3 into 5, so it's less to call for him. He gets better odds, and he's probably never folding ace jack there. So that's why. The river shove is fine. You're shoving obviously for value. Hard draw will fold. I sometimes I'd suggest check calling the river, but I think we're losing on a lot of value from ace jack and ace 10, so jamming here is fine. Sometimes I agree, sometimes they show up with ace queen here, sometimes they might call with some sort of, but most of the time, either fold or just call again with a first hand. So that's why I like the shove on the river. I think this hand is played perfectly. So Broke Sultan, I am now a fan of you. You played this hand pretty darn well. So congrats on that, and continue. If he has ace queen or eights or deuces, he played the hand miserably, and it's just variance, my friend. So nice hand, and continue. Our second post for the day is from D-Shanks, who has 2 posts on the forum. So welcome D-Shanks to the forum. Post more in this thread. I'll analyze all your hands. So let's just get to it. Hey Scrimitzu, since I'm pretty new here and just got to know that you have to post 10 times in the forum before you are able to create a thread. This is like a dream come true. Awesome. So villain, what can we say about the villain? Villain, VBIP 22 voluntarily put into pot, and PFR is 15. Pre-flop raise. So his AF is 1 over 388 hands. What does AF1 mean? This means he's super passive, and when he raises, basically he's got 2 pair or more. That's what it means to me, at least. Fold to 3-bet 20% 2 out of 10. Does this already mean something with the number of hands that I have? Yes, it does. 400 hands. You can evaluate fold to 3-bet. 500 is the golden number for fold to 3-bet, but 388 is still enough. He folded 2 times out of 10, so that means he's pretty loose in calling 3-bets, and he doesn't respect them a lot. Your stats are pretty fine. You're a little bit loose for my taste, so 99-25, but basically on 376 hands, you've probably been running kind of. AF3 is perfect. So let's get to the hand. So getting on with the hand, the cutoff raises 3x, the button calls 3x, and you squeeze 12x from the big blind. I really love the squeeze size because it's 4x, and it's big enough to make people fold, and it's small enough to look like a bluff. So raise size is good. You're getting it in with the cutoff, who's about 30 bigs deep, so he's kind of a weak player, and he folds. The button calls because he doesn't really respect 3-bet. So let's see what range is he calling here with. He folded, so he called pre-flop, and after that he called your 3-bet. So I'm putting him basically on pairs, suited connectors, or ace high type of hands, maybe king queen. So let's think about it. It's ace queen, ace jack, king queen. If he's really bad, king jack, and all pairs. So and probably some suited connectors like 7-8, 9-10, jack 10 suited, king jack suited, stuff like that. So moving on, you see about the flop for about 72. I'd like to see a little less here, just because when he's calling with 7s here, he's calling 3/4, he's calling 2/3, he's calling half the pot. So what you're folding is actually ace queen, king jack, maybe 3s, 4s, 5s. If he's folding 7s, he's folding to a half pot. So I don't think that making it more than half pot affects his folding range. So you're getting the same results here. I'd also like a check call here, just because he's probably checking back his 3s, 4s, 5s, 7s, 8s. He's probably betting 10s and 9s, all sets and stuff like that. But he'd probably be inclined to bluff with ace queen, all his king highs, all his ace highs. And you're basically beating everything by a wide margin that he could bluff. So I'd also like a check call here. A c-bet is fine. You're probably folding some of the pairs that he has. I would like to see on the flop what his fold to c-bet is, and also what his fold to c-bet and 3-bet pots is, because we have 8 pots that he played in 3-bet pots, because he only folded 2 times out of 10 to 3-bets. So basically we have enough information to see if he folds a lot or he calls a lot, because if he calls here a lot, so he floats a lot on the flop, you'll have a super hard time if any card except a king or an ace comes on the turn. So I'd incline more on check calling here if he's not folding a lot to pop c-bets, and if he is, I'd bet. So the ace comes on the turn, it's basically gin for you. What is already a little bit big, you have to bet here just because you're getting value from tens, jacks, maybe stubborn eights still called, but you're getting a lot of value from maybe stubborn ace queens that call the flop, like floats of his if he's not folding on the flop enough in 3-bet pot. You're getting value from kings. Kings. He would probably and queens. He would probably 3-bet pre-flop, so he can't have queens or kings, but he would still call with tens and jacks. You have a super good hand here. Only sets beat you with 9s, 6s, and deuces. So I'll probably bet this turn, but checking isn't that terrible just because you could get value from, he might fold sometimes 8s here or 10s and jacks, but checking here and betting again on the river could get you another street of value if he's folding 10s and jacks here. So moving on with the hand, you bet half pot. This bet is not terrible. I'd actually bet a little bit more to protect myself from 10-9 of clubs, from 10-8 of clubs, 10-7 of clubs that maybe calls pre-flop and calls the flop. So I'd actually bet more to get value from the flush draws here. Flush draws don't raise here. I don't think you get shoved on by flush draws, especially you're really deep with the guy. So I'd actually bet around $2 here. Moving on to the, he calls, moving on to the river. The river isn't terrible, only 10-7 of clubs got there, and stubborn eights that call the turn, but I don't think they are calling the turn that much. So if he doesn't have a set here, you're probably good. He never has ace-8 here. The only hand that he could have that beats you on the river is 9-8, but I don't think that's raising. So basically, but the two calls, so when he calls the flop and calls the turn, if you bet the river, you're not getting more value out of jacks or tens or hand that he's calling the flop and turn with. That's why I advocate more on check calling the flop, or if it goes check check, betting the river, then because you get value from jacks and tens. Now we can't actually bet just because you're not getting value from ace queen here. You are not getting value from a lot of hands, if none. So I'd actually check call here. Consider check folding if he bombs it, like pots the river. If he pots the river, I'd consider check folding and just leaving it to 9s, 6s, and deuces, just calling the flop, calling the turn, and bombing the river. I probably call half pot bet, but you have to think, like, what is he betting the river with? You're only beating ace queen, stubborn ace jack here, and most of the other hands, they beat you, so not getting great odds. So half pot bet, I'm calling. More than that, probably folding. You elect to bet the river, and it's a little less than half the pot. I can understand the sizing. It's more. I'd actually bet like 150 here, 180. It's more around a third of the pot, but 242 isn't terrible. Let's say it isn't terrible. Ace queen is still calling. When you get shoved, you get raised, so you get shoved on. This is a kind of a terrible spot that you got yourself into by barreling relentlessly and not thinking, like, what could he call me with here? And what could he have called up and the turn and now got to the river, and this I can beat, and is calling a value bet. Ace queen is not calling a value bet here, probably. Jacks and 10 is folding. So you're only beating to get called by the same hand, or probably maybe a stubborn ace queen. So when he raises here, I'm only putting him on 9s, 6s, deuces, or stubborn 8s. So basically that's it. Maybe another combination possibly would be 10-7 of clubs, but I guess that's it. So your call here, I think it's not that great because we aren't getting buffed that much by villain. So I think the call on the river is bad, and you should be trying to examine the spot a little bit more to see why this call is non-profitable. Shanks has also said his thought process on this hand, so let's also analyze that. Pre-flop, ace king offsuit, let's try a squeeze. I hope my understanding of a squeeze is right. Yeah, it's perfect, bro. So squeezing is 3-betting with pre-flop raiser and at least one caller. Flop, since we are in a 3-bet pot, I thought a c-bet is fine. It is. I also like check calling, trying to rep queens plus and take down the pot. Once he calls queens plus, was also the range I put him on. The problem here is he 3-bet pre-flop queens plus, so queens, kings, aces, ace king probably. He would probably re-raise against that guy who was a short stack. I could really use he 3-bet pre-flop because you didn't write it in the post, but I really think that he 3-bet queens plus and ace king pre-flop. So once he calls, I'm putting him on a different range as I assigned him in the hand. Turn. Was pretty happy to see the ace and thought I can value bet here if he has queens or kings. Again, he almost never has queens or kings here. He probably 3-bet them up, so you're still, I'd like a check more on the turn. River, when I saw the 8, I was not too scared because I don't think 10-7 will get to the river that often after a 3-bet pre-flop, so I was thinking I can bet for value again, because some people hate to fold queens or kings at the micros. Yeah, I think the range that you assigned is kind of wide and not thought that well, considering pre-flop action, but it's still fine. It's the micros. After he re-raised me, I guess I was leveling myself. Yeah, you were pretty strong. He's never bluffing there when he's raising the river 200 blinds deep. That's never a bluff. I thought maybe he's trying to get me to fold my ace king with any ace x trying to rep the straight. But you bet the flop, and he's probably not calling the flop most of the time with ace x. He's not calling pre-flop with ace 9, so that's not pretty good. Aftermath. In my opinion, a river play was awful, and it would have been much better to check call the river. The fact that he's an AF of 1 have been an indicator that he has a set, and I also think that with the size of his re-raise, he's actually telling me what he's holding, but sadly I didn't realize that in the hand and was just to win love with my ace king. Yeah, that's probably right. So beginners tend to overplay pairs, tend to overplay over pairs, so it's a good mistake to be doing, and you can learn from you can learn a lot from what you're doing right now, as long as you acknowledge these as being mistakes. So I would be happy to hear your opinion about this hand and my thought process. Well, you're welcome, bro. Do you think I should have just folded to or re-raise this big? Yeah, I think you should have either check call the river or just and fold it to a re-raise 100%. He's deep. He never bluffs here. I have so many hands I have questions about, but since it's one question per video, I just started with my biggest loss. That brings up another question. Do you think playing deep is a mistake if you are a beginner, or should I try to get used to it as fast as possible? Playing deep is not a mistake if you are a beginner, because there are loads of players who are not thinking that much about the hand that they are in, so your thought process is pretty okay compared to the other players that are in the micro. So playing deep is not a mistake. You will get more money off them, but learn to fold to raises, because usually in small limits like this, when someone raises, he's usually repping either if he's not like bluffing a lot, if his AF is lower than 4, you're basically always facing 2-pair plus, so that's why you should learn to fold more to raises at the micros. Here, I think what you have is called fancy play syndrome, and most people have that from watching high stakes poker or WSOP tournaments or stuff like that. So on the river, I'd be super tight in calling that raise. So that's about it. Let's get to our next hand. So the next hand is Hitchhiking's hand, who has posted an all limit hand and says, "Hey Scrim, unsure what to do in spots like this where we flop a flush, face aggro, and then see a fourth flush card on the turn when we aren't holding the nuts or even close in this case." So you're holding ace-10 of clubs, which makes me think that you actually kind of posted a different hand, probably. But let's just analyze this one, and you'll post for the next video. You'll the non-nutty flush hand. So let's just get to the hand. Getting on with the hand, you're in, I guess, what's under the gun position. But player 2 wasn't playing, so he shows here that he has card, but he did not either fold or call or raise, so I guess he wasn't playing. So player 4 calls from the big blind, go to the flop, and I also see that this is a no-limit 10 hand, so it wrote up, it wrote no-limit 4, but this is a no-limit 10 hand. Alright, so I'm gonna say that I like the raise with ace-10 suited, but when you raise and you get called and you get a flop like this one, you have to understand that if you see bet ace-10, you're only getting called. So pre-flop he's only calling with hands like ace-10 is ace-jack, ace-queen, probably 3-betting ace-king. So when the flop comes ace-6-7, what are you actually getting called? So probably tens, jacks that are kind of stubborn enough and don't fold. Hands that want to float you on the flop, and bigger aces. Probably 6-7 is either calling or raising. I personally raise with 6-7 here just because our hand could be easily counterfeit. An 8, a 9 is terrible for us on turn, a 10-2, a 5. It just brings so many straight possibilities that you kind of, you're wanting to raise here 6-7. So he donks on you 0.65, which is pretty nice. It's pot, so he donks pot. For calling here, I really love the call. Some players make the mistake here of raising just because they think they usually have the best hand, but the truth is that when this guy just donks pot into you, he probably either is on air or something really strong. So he's kind of polarizing his range with a pot donk bet on the flop. So if he's polarizing his range by raising, you're holding all his bluffs, and you're keeping his hands that beat you in. So nothing that you beat calls you. So I really like the call here. Turn brings a 9 of hearts. It's a pretty okay hand. We get a gut shot. So when he checks here, I'd actually consider checking just because there is no card on the river except a 10 that could actually hurt you, and the 10 doesn't hurt you that much. He almost never has 8s here. He never has ace-8. He never has king-8 because he was only calling a pre-flop raise of yours. So it's probably a good thing to check back here because we're still getting called by all his ace-jack plus type of hands, but you're folding all his bluffs. So by checking here, you're letting him bluff again on the river. You might get to that gut shot, and maybe he has some flush draws in his range, but I think by potting the flop, he'd also try to bluff the turn with the flush draw. He got it. So you bet 1 into 195. The bet is not terrible. You're protecting your hand a little bit. But here, where he raises, so he donks pot on the flop and then he check raises the turn, he's probably trying to protect the big hand. So I'm either putting him now on 6-7, 6s, 7s, possibly ace-9, but I think he bet ace-9, maybe 10, 8-10, 8-10 of hearts is a really strong possibility. So even 9s, the bet on the flop was kind of weird, so even 9s would make sense here, so I'm folding ace-10. Select to call, we get to the river is a jack of diamonds. Maybe you try to put him on a flush draw here, and that's why you called, but basically all his value range beats us. So on the river, he bets 45 into 6.95. Kind of like a crying call. I'm thinking that here he has a value hand, but not that strong, so it looks like, or either he has the absolute super nuts, he has 8-10, or he has a mediocre value hand, like ace jack doesn't make sense for raising onto the so the hand that makes the most sense when he's betting here this small is either 6s or 7s, 6-7, or I guess that's about it. So you elect to call. I'm probably never calling here because I know we're beat 100% of the time when he raises the turn. I'm folding the turn and folding the river as played. So that's basically it. Our last hand for this video is AK Flush 94's hand, so Haya AK Flush. And he says, hey Scrimitzu, this hand is just a pretty standard suck-out, but I just wondered if I should be raising the turn for value. My logic for check calling the turn was that I didn't want to price out the flush draw. So let's just go on and check the hand. Starting out with the hand, we can see that it's 1 cent, 2 cent, Norman hold'em, so it's NL2. This hand should be played pretty straightforward. You get 5s. Let's just down a little bit. So you get 5s in the small blind. You have a raise, and you call it basically calling here, I think, to set mine. So flop comes gin. It's 9-5-3. To donk bet here. I'd be more inclined. The donk bet is actually really interesting because you're protecting your hand against flush draws, straight draws, but I think villain will be c-betting the flop a wide amount. This also is dependent on what stat we have on him, so I think the flop donk is pretty fine. So donk the flop, der raises, probably the real der, of course. So der raises to 0.27. So when he raises here, what does he have? He has obviously his value range is 9s, 3s, and 10s plus, probably ace-king, and his semi-bluff range is probably any two clubs with overs, and possibly like 4-6, and stuff like that. You check the turn, and der bets 33. Now, when you check the turn, we're always checking this turn to raise. You're probably maybe scared that he has jacks or 9s, but you have a double flush draw on the turn, you have a ton of straight draws, so every time when this turn card comes, you need to check raise. I like the check, I love the check because your opponent raised the flop, so he's probably like 90% betting the turn. But when you check here, you have to check raise to protect your hand from hands that could get there on the river, which are flush draws and straight draws, and also some over pairs getting sets, but that's rare. The river comes a king, 0 bets, 0.88. So you donk into him. I love the donk. It's a really safe river. Sizing could have been a little bit more, so I donk for about 1.1 just to get value from ace king of clubs and like king jack and all the hand. There are loads of hands that are calling us on the river. You actually played this hand a little bit weird because donk called, check called the turn and donked the river. It's so weird. You're putting your opponent in the fog so much. I kind of love it, but the check call on the turn, that's kind of the worst line you can take. So basically check raise is the best on the. So you bet 0.88, there goes all in for 1.46. It's never a fold here. We are never folding to a raise. Even if you are deep, I'm never folding to this raise. So he shows fives, he shows kings. So he got there on the river. That's why, like, I would have liked a raise on the flop, on the turn. Just putting a lot more money before the river so you can shove comfortably the river, like half pot or 2/3 of the pot. Just shove the river. So they're also being unpredictable here. You could do that with the flush draws, with a flush draw and 2 overs, check raising with queen jack of clubs on the turn. So it's still not that value oriented of a range. So it's kind of fine. Raising on the turn is fine. He won't put you only on fives. I never hate 3-betting the flop, so raising his raise is also fine on the flop. You're ripping a lot of flush draws, and your value range is kind of really tight. It's kind of small, so you're ripping more flush draws than value. So that's why I'd also love 3-betting the flop. Otherwise, the hands are cooler, you played it fine. I really love the donk on the river, it's amazing, so well done, sir. And guys, I guess that's about it. Thank you for tuning in, and see you in the next video. Have fun, guys. Farewell until the next time, and